So Juiz de Fora is a city, a very large city. It's not the largest in the state. It's a little bit, well, it's smaller than the capital, but it's a pretty large city. It has an interesting feel just because the state of Minas Gerais has a very, I mean, in all of Brazil, it's known as having a very specific culture. It's kind of a country culture, very. It's kind of a hick culture, not really, but they. But Juiz de Fora is kind of a mix between the Minas Gerais culture and the Rio culture. So it's kind of this mix of accents and interesting aspects. So it's a very large city, and the city, well, all the cities in Brazil are divided up into what they call bairros, or neighborhoods, and so that makes missionary work pretty easy because you can just focus on one neighborhood at a time. It's very easy to plan out where you're going to work. And in Juiz de Fora, I mean, there's some areas that are very, like downtown. Obviously, the centro is very, very densely populated. A lot of big buildings, and then farther out, there's some other areas that are called favelas, which is very low income housing. The poorest of the poor, and between those there's a gradient also, of people that are middle class, and in some areas, a lot of the areas now in Brazil, there are drug problems. Even in the smaller cities, there are drug problems. So, policemen, they carry around big guns with them. You get used to that after a while. I didn't really see any problems with policemen and drug lords or anything. There wasn't really an issue with that for me. I always felt very safe. But in Juiz de Fora itself, it's pretty industrialized area. There's a university in Juiz de Fora, which is pretty well known. So there are in one of the areas where I served, one of the neighborhoods was, a lot of college students, a lot of people going to school, a lot of smart people. Minas Gerais as a whole is known for its, cheese production, and then in Rio, there's a valley called the Valley of Coffee, which is very historic for having produced a lot of coffee, and it still has a lot of coffee. And a lot of people, they would tell us that over the weekend they'd be going to the Roça, which is the country. They'd be going there to spend the weekend, and that was one of the big excuses for not going to church on Sunday, was that they had to go to the country to kind of help out sometimes they'd have a father who was working there during the week, and then they'd go visit him over the weekends. That's not so much for Juiz de Fora, but for some other areas. One big thing there is hair salons. There are a lot of hair salons. There are a lot of gyms. There are a lot of fast food, like little snack shacks, or I don't know how you'd say it in English, but a little small restaurants that are serving fried foods and stuff like that. And that's pretty common for any of the cities there, I think. Yeah, so Juiz de Fora, it literally means external judge. No one really knows why it's called that, but it's called that. One cool thing about Minas Gerais and the area where I was serving is that pretty much every city has a Christ the Redeemer statue, a small one. In Rio they have the big one, right? But in the other cities they have a smaller one. And so in Juiz de Fora, the city itself, there's a hill of Christ where you can hike up and go see the statue. And so that's a lot of fun. In another city, there's another area near Três Corações where I served. There's another city that's called, oh man, what is that called? Anyway, sorry, it's really famous for having a lot of hippies there, for the slate that they have there. And it's really interesting because the whole city sits on top of a mountain, so you can look out and see everything all around you. It's very touristy city. It's very beautiful there. So housing there, houses are kind of built on top of each other. it's very easy to hear what's going on, and so at night you can't really be that loud because sometimes the neighbors get really upset, and it's because like part of the house a lot of the time is an open space that kind of goes up in the apartment complex, and it's kind of an open space for that kind of carries a lot of sound, and the other apartments can hear it. That doesn't really make sense, but I don't really know how to describe it. But that's where, I mean, we'd go out and hang our laundry out there so it'd dry faster. Anyhow. And water where I served, I mean, people always worry about the water in Brazil. I always drink straight from the tap. I mean, from a cup, but drink the water that came out of the tap. And I never had a problem. Water's not really a problem in that area. Although if you want to get bottled water, you can. I mean, there's no problem with that. One thing is that when I got to Brazil, I was really, really nervous that anyone was going to come up on the street and just rob me. I don't know. I had this image of Brazil that it's just like this crazy place where there's a lot of crime and a lot of drugs, and I don't know. It's not like a normal place, but it's very. I mean, there are a lot of things that are different, but it's very similar also. People aren't just going to come up and rob you. I learned after 2 weeks in Brazil, I started carrying money on me so I could actually buy things. And it's not a problem. It's a very safe place. As long as you stay out of, the higher crime areas at night. But other than that, it's a very safe place. Don't have to worry about being robbed or anything. So in Brazil, they use the real, which is, so when I first got to Brazil, it was like $1 was as much as 2 reais. So real is plural, or is singular, and reais is plural. So $1 was about 2 reais. Right now, $1 is worth about 4 reais. So it's kind of fluctuated a lot. The cost of living has gone up a little bit. And so the thing is, living as a missionary, you have the missionary fund. So even though things may be pretty cheap compared to US money, it's still pretty expensive compared to what you get. But for example, like there's this one place near where we lived where it was all you could eat pizza. And one night they had a special, 17 reais. So if you convert that to dollars, that's only like, I don't know, that'd be like $4.50. So that's pretty cheap for all you can eat pizza. But there, I mean, that's pretty expensive compared to other foods.